They run the script 10, 20 times, and they get all the devices that have backed up. Half an hour, they were done with it. If you just Google, or you can use help.
Hey everyone, this is Erika the Dev. Welcome back to the Learning to Code with AI course for network engineers. I'm super excited to have Sergey Lisitsin on with us today. Sergey is one of the DevNet 500, right? A bit of a legend here in network automation space, in my opinion, and also just very generous with his knowledge and willing to show us a script that he wrote that's going to be useful to y'all starting out. So, Sergey, I'm going to let you just introduce yourself a little bit, and then maybe we can dive into what you wrote.
Erika, well, thank you very much for this warm introduction. I mean, you're obviously exaggerating my humble capabilities in networking and network automation. But yes, I am Sergey Lisitsin. I've been a network engineer for about just over 15 years, and in general, IT engineer for more than 25 years. And yes, I'm a big fan of network automation and service provider technologies. I earned my DevNet 500 recognition back in 2020. And I've been a Cisco designated VIP for 9 years running this year.
So yeah, thanks for being here. And you had a script for helping people back up their device images, right? Can you tell me, set up a little bit the scene of what this script was created for, why you made it?
Yeah, absolutely. So a few years back, I was working for a company that is a managed service provider, and we've had multiple customers. We looked after their networks, and I worked on a project team. So I was delivering projects for our customers, but we also had NOC guys, which just looked after, day-to-day running of the mill. And one of their tasks that they had was checking the daily backups of customers' network devices, whether those were Cisco's or Juniper's or whatever else they may have. And they used to do it manually. So they used a program called NCM, Network Configuration Management Manager. And every morning they would come on a shift and start the day by just logging in to the GUI and going through the devices one by one, making sure that devices have backed up successfully. And the ones that weren't, they were finding out why. And we would normally have like 3, maybe maximum 4 guys at a time on a shift. And they would split like 50, 60 customers across them.
Oh my gosh.
And going through them, customer by customer, device by device. So that was quite a labor intensive task. And it took them best part of the morning to the whole NOC team. So I thought, well, that's not very efficient. And, I've been doing some scripting and automation a couple of years before then. And I thought, well, I maybe can put my knowledge and experience to some use here. And I spoke to the guys and I said, well, guys, would it help you if I wrote a script that you can just run it? And let's say you type in a customer's name and straight away you get a full report on the backup status of devices. And I was so excited. They said, yeah, well, if you can do that. And straight away we spoke to my manager and he said, well, yeah, if you can do that. He said, well, how much time do you need? Like, I can give you like 2 weeks to write it. I said, well, I'll probably get it done in like half a day at most, right? I said, well, if you can do it in half a day, that would be amazing. And obviously I went down, sat down and started looking at what I could do. I first checked whether the MCM had any sort of REST API, which I was quite proficient with. And I thought I might be able to use REST API, but then I came up with an even simpler and I think better solution, because pretty much every system that deals with like monitoring or management of network devices on a backend, it would be using some sort of an SQL database, which is the case with an NCM as well. So they were using, I think it was MySQL or maybe Microsoft SQL database. So I just found out an interface to tap into the database using Python and wrote a little script that would just go into the database, and using a simple SQL query, it would just pull out information about the backup statuses of the devices for a particular customer. And that was it. It was really basic script. I mean, I'm going to go through the entire code and you'll see how short and simple it is. But it's something that was so simple and easy to write, and yet it did save so much time to the guys on the NOC. They were really, really happy about it.
So two questions before we dive into your code. First is, did you know any SQL before writing this script? Like, is this something that you learned on the go to solve the problem?
Well, I did know very basics. Like I could do a simple query. I mean, obviously, I'm a slightly more proficient, and that is one of the points I was going to touch upon, because the script that I'm going to show you now is a slightly improved version of that script, and I'll tell you what the improvement is.
Okay. And you have all this, well, okay, you're being humble, but you have all this success in network automation, right? And obviously you're fairly comfortable with network automation at this point.
Yes.
You know, you can write something in half a day. Um, what got you started in network automation? Like how did you go from network engineer to, oh, I'm just comfortable coding up something on the fly?
Well, I was always quite fond of, quite interested in programming in general. So I started learning programming when I was probably about 8 years old. I
Wow.
started with
Okay.
basic programming. Then when I was about 12, I started learning Pascal, which was kind of a standard for students, in schools and universities at the time. But we're talking like early 90s. And I've learned quite a bit of Pascal, but it came to a point where you either had to be, back in the days, if you wanted to program, you either had to be a professional software developer, or there was no use for programming in, general, administration as such. So
Yeah.
by the time of Windows 95, 98, you needed to know the systems, but you didn't necessarily need to know any of the coding. You didn't need any programming skills
Right.
whatsoever. And now when this sort of trend started coming back, I was really excited about it, because I always liked to write programs. And I was working for a company that did need to do some automation, and it was actually with Ansible. They were deploying some VMware NSX infrastructure using Ansible. And also we needed to do something with Python as well, to modify some of the modules on the fly. And that's how I started learning Python, and I really enjoyed it.
I just want to say that I wish that I had had that in school, like that was just part of the curriculum, teaching people to code, because kind of what I'm getting from you and something that I think some of my students struggle with is I'm strictly a network engineer. I don't get into that stuff. Not feeling like they have the mindset to think programmatically. And I think that your story is proof that it's just something you kind of get used to, right? With time and practice, and it's not something special.
Absolutely.
Not to be negating anything that you just said, but that anybody can do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I feel a bit lucky that I've got a bit of that background,
Yes.
knowing some of the programming concepts, some of the, algorithms, and I wasn't complete stranger to it. I know that some people are, and for them, it's probably a steeper learning curve, especially in the beginning. And I was
Yeah.
kind of a step ahead of that, and that gave me that slight advantage, maybe. That's why I managed to get it onto DevNet 500, because I was quite proficient by the time the exam was released. I already knew quite a bit of Python, and Python is a huge chunk of the network programmability and automation curriculum.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Well, I won't jabber on longer. Let's look at your code.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Cool. So here's what it is. So we start with importing some of the modules. So I'm importing argv to read the input of the customer name. And then I'm importing a datetime submodule from datetime module. So I can capture the current time. Now, this is where that little improvement comes from, but I will come to that in a sec.
Okay.
Now, what we're doing is and obviously I'm importing the Psychop G2, which is a SQL library for Postgres SQL Server. So I'm simulating the database on my computer with a Docker container with Postgres SQL Server, right?
Nice.
So obviously I'm creating some variables. I'm reading in the argument number 1 from the input of the command line. And that is the customer name that we're checking. And then I'm also capturing today's date. So to make sure that I'm only querying the backups that were created today. I don't need the whole history, because we've had like loads of backups. Now these 4 variables here, they're just the connection variables to connect to the database: the host name, the username, the database name that we're going to be querying, and the password. Obviously, here it's not very secure in plain text, but
It's okay.
I'm keeping that for authenticity because back then I did it this way. Yeah, I wasn't very security conscious, so I
Sure.
did it this way. Now, then we've got a multi-line F string, which is the actual SQL query. And here is where my current version is slightly enhanced, because back then I didn't know joins and I didn't know casts and I didn't know all that advanced stuff. So mine was just bring it up. I was querying the database, bringing in all the backups that match the customer name, right? And then what I was doing is I was filtering all that within my Python side of things rather than within the SQL. So now I improved this slightly. So I am filtering it down on the customer name and also the ones that are matching today's date. So I'm only taking for one customer and the latest backup. So
Makes sense.
and then here's the actual code itself. So we've got the main function. I'm creating a DB connection object using a module and connecting to the database using the variables that I created earlier. I am creating a cursor object, which is the one that allows you to run your SQL queries against your database and return the results. And I'm executing my query with substituting the actual query with the templated SQL query with the variables in it. And I'm saving it into results variable. Then obviously print results, I commented out, that was for debugging purposes. And then I'm printing the results. I'm printing the device name, the device ID, the host name, and the last result code, which is either success or failure. And then I'm just printing these results one by one. And back then I also saved it into file, but for simplicity here, I cut it off. And this is it. This is all there is to it. There's pretty much single SQL query and printing of the results. Very simple.
I think that's what one of the first impressions that I want people watching to get from this is that this is a highly useful script, right? I mean, I don't know how much time this saved you guys, but highly useful script and relatively short, right? I mean, like you imported a few libraries or modules, whatever, and 35 lines of code. I mean, that's not much. I don't want people to be scared seeing the sequel, right? Like don't worry about that. You can learn that if you ever like needed to solve a problem. That's not what I'm going to focus on with this video.
Yeah.
Can we go back up to the top? And I'm just going to really beat this over the head in terms of helping people understand what you've done here and how that relates to what they've learned. So guys, like we've talked about, right? We don't code everything ourselves. We import libraries that were built for specific purposes, like Sergey has done. It's pretty common practice to put them all at the top so that we can see them all at once, know what we're using. And Sergey, can you explain to us how you knew to use these particular libraries? I'm sure that some of them, like datetime, you just kind of knew to use, but maybe like the SQL library you could talk about.
Well, it was just a Google search. I mean, I didn't know at the time. That was the first time when I used something to do with SQL in Python. So I just Googled, Python library to handle SQL queries, and there was quite a few. And I think I came up with one which is quite similar to this Psycop G2. I think the one that I'm using now is specific to Postgres SQL. So it connects to Postgres database, but you can have more generic database handling modules in Python, and they work in a similar way with the cursor objects.
I love it. So you didn't know how to do something, you just Google it, and it's possible to just find out, right? Find out what else someone else built or has used in their projects.
Absolutely. And this is one of the huge advantages of high-level languages, and especially Python. It's got such a great vast amount of ready-made modules for anything you can think of, from accounting to, I don't know, astronomy to handling SQL queries, whatever you
Oh,
want
yeah.
to do with it. There's 100% somebody already wrote a perfectly, workable library for it, and you just need to Google it and probably scroll through some documentation, and you're pretty much done.
I totally agree. Sometimes I have disagreements with people about Python being the best beginner-friendly language. That's like my own side rant that I won't get into, but that's one thing I really love about Python.
Yeah, it's extremely versatile in that respect.
When you set the date, right? So he's created a today's date variable on line 6, right? And he is using a built-in function that's built into the datetime modular library. I call them libraries. I can't ever remember what it is in Python. He's using the .now function built into datetime, right? So instead of you having to write a function to find or calculate the date time today, you're just calling on something that is already built into that library. And if you didn't know that .now was a part of the datetime library, what could you do, Sergey?
Well, again, if you just Google, or you could use help. Now, Python's got a great help, built-in help system, where if you import a module and you don't know what to do with it, you can invoke help function on the module itself, and it will give you the basic help about this module and what it contains. Then you can do a dir, so dir, on the module, and it will show you what you've got inside this module, which classes, which functions you've got there, which constants, and then you can run help on each one individually. So you could do help and in parentheses do datetime.now. And
would you want to show people that really quick? Is that something you're comfortable doing?
Absolutely, no problem.
Okay.
Let's open our terminal. There we go. Oops, we've got a lot of stuff here. Oh, this is our SQL console connection, which I'll show you in a second as well. Well, here we go. If I go into Python and I do import datetime, okay, and then I want to know what datetime is, and I do help on datetime, and it tells me this is specific datetime and related types, okay, and it's giving me a description, and it gives me some class info on the date class and so on. It's quite vast, but what else you can do is you can do dir datetime, and here we go. It lists all the objects within that datetime module. So these ones are the constants, max year, min year, UTC, and these are classes and functions. So if we concentrate on this one, and again I do help date time dot date time, so we go one layer deeper into the module, and it tells me this is a class datetime of type date, and then it's got some methods within it, and then if we want to look at the specific method, which I know is the method called now, and it tells me it's a built-in function now, and it returns a new datetime object representing current local time, local to TZ, or your local time zone.
I think what I really like about this is that it's in the CLI, like in the terminal, right?
Yes.
I think that's familiar to folks. And, the course hasn't gotten big on theory, right? I've tried to stay very practical to the point that we have not even touched classes versus objects yet. I've tried to get people building before even having to explain that, because I don't know. I feel like that spooks people before they're even ready to get started. It's very abstract.
Yes.
So again, if you're not familiar with the difference between classes and objects when listening to Sergey, like, don't worry, you're going to learn it very shortly. It's not going to be scary. Just like you said, this is showing you what's in the library or the module.
Yeah. The great thing is about it, its help is available even if you're offline, right? As long as you've got the module, you've got the help for this module, and you can at least get some basic info and help on how to use it and what it is.
I like it. So with a library or module like datetime, right, you can Google how to use it or what functionality is included. You can use the help, Python help in the terminal like Sergey has demonstrated, or as you're going to learn later in the course, you can use AI to, learn about the library. So you got options here.
Exactly.
Okay. Actually, were you going to run the script on this call too? Should I let you run the script before I keep babbling on?
Let's do it. So
Okay.
we've got I've got, as I say, I've got simulated database, and we've got 3 customers in there called Rabbit, Hobbit, and Bobbit.
Oh, nice.
Very inventive. So I'm
Very
going
inspired.
to check. I'm going to check backup status for one of them. Let's say we start with Hobbit. So I do Pyth to run the script, and I give it a customer name. So this is how a script was meant to operate. And I run it, and straight away I get my device IDs, the names, and the last result of the backup. And we see that 2 of the devices have got their device failed, and the rest was successful. We can try it again with another one. Let's say what's happening with Rabbit. Oh, we see Rabbit is all successful. He's happy Rabbit.
This is very clean too. So how he has this formatted to look very pretty in the terminal too. That's your F string down there, right?
Yes, correct. So if we have a look at...
So I've showed you guys how to do a print statement, but that's literally just printing everything, line by line by line. It's not doing things special to format it. Versus he is doing that here.
Yeah. So we're using format as string, and I'm inserting the variables into the string, and also I'm inserting the alignment markers into my lines. So this format here tells it to align it to the left and give it 20 characters of fixed space in a print line. And I'm formatting the headers in the same way. So I've got the device ID header with the 20 characters, the name with 20 characters, and the result with 20 characters. And in the same way, I am formatting the actual output values.
I'm a fan of how you're printing that out. It just makes it very simple and clean. Again, I'm guessing that your team was highly impressed with this.
Yeah, absolutely. They loved it, and the time saving was really immense. As I say, they 3 to 4 people spent pretty much all morning until lunchtime going through backups, checking them, and doing it one by one, clicking through the GUIs. That was very intensive task,
and just boring.
Yeah, this could be done by they split again their customers across 3 to 4 people. They run the script 10-20 times, and they get all the devices that have backed up and that haven't. So in half an hour they were done with it at most.
So we know your script works. You're not fooling us. And we've gotten to the top. You mind if we scroll back up, and I'll just make a few more comments. He's basically setting the stage for the script, right? Like everything that's happening, all the action is happening in that main function, like we've learned happens. But in order for that function to run, it needs a lot of information set in the beginning. And so he's created all of these variables with all the information that function is going to need to run.
Yeah, there's nothing about it. It's just setting the scene. The only thing is we are creating this F string, which is a template, and it hasn't got any, we are substituting these placeholders with the actual values that we are capturing before then. So we've got the today's date, which we are getting from here, and we're substituting the customer name with this, which is
good point. So that curly braces with the variable name in there is how he keeps that dynamic instead of having to hard code each individual customer name.
Yes, correct.
And then all of the data types for all of these variables are strings. So we know that because of the single quotes. Okay, I think unless you want to say more on it, we can go down to the main function. Okay, so this is where I feel like to someone new starting out, it can get complicated because you're still building that muscle of thinking programmatically and in terms of classes and objects. I haven't told them use those words, classes and objects, but thinking in those terms. So when Sergey is setting the DB connection here, right, he is calling on this library and using the functionality built into the library. That connect function is something that is within scicog sock G2, however you say that. Right? So he could Google, use Python help, whatever, to determine that. And then what is really cool is that DB underscore connection acts as, I should really have done a video on this already, but acts as an object of the scicog B2 library, right? So now you can access the functions of that library using the DB connection variable. So that is what he's doing on line 26, right? He sets a new variable so that he can continue storing each new result into a new variable, right? So because the program doesn't remember anything itself, you have to help it remember everything. But now he's using db_connection instead of the library name to call on that functionality. And why is that, Sergey? Why would you do that?
We are kind of getting deeper into the rabbit hole. So we start with an outer shell. We create a bigger object.
Yep.
And then we start picking up the sub objects of that bigger object. We need some specific functionality of that huge blob that can handle anything within the database you can imagine, but we only need a smaller part of it. So that cursor variable represents a sub part of that bigger object, which refers to a cursor object, which lets you run SQL queries against the database that you're connecting to. So we are saving that into a new variable. And then within that, we again call a very specific function of actually executing that query against the database itself. So this is how we do. We create a huge, big object, and then start getting more and more specific as to what we want to do with it, with which part of it.
Yep. And I think that practice of being able to go line by line, understanding what is happening with each of these variables, like what is stored or what each one is referring to, I think that's a good programmatic practice, right? Again, because AI can generate something like this, but I think that actually understanding the code is being able to explain somewhat, like Sergey has said, or me, why you're creating these different variables.
Yes.
I'm not explaining that well, but just that's something that you should practice in order to actually understand.
And one tip from me is the great thing about Python is that you can use it in an interactive fashion. You can run the Python shell and just start running these commands one by one, even without creating the functions. So you could import the psycopg2 library, and then straight away you could connect within that shell, within its runtime. You could create this DB connection, connect to the database, check the result, then create the cursor, again execute some functionality, check the result, play with it. And this is how you start learning, because it's all about, a lot of Python is about this very complex nesting structure of functions and objects and data structures. And by doing it step by step in an interactive manner, it really helps you understand it quickly. Right? You couldn't, for example, comparing that with my prior knowledge, like in Pascal, you couldn't do that. You needed to run a program, and then you needed to execute it in whole. You have to run it, interpret it, and run it as a whole. So if you had a program that spanned 1,500 lines, you couldn't just play with part of it in isolation to check some functionality in isolation. You'd have to do it within a huge file and run it all at once. With Python, you can just do as small a bit as you want. There's actually a lot of Python is one-liners. You can do a lot with one line in Python.
Do you want to show them the interactive shell too? I haven't shown them that either.
That's what we did with the help as well. So, oops, wrong combination. So if we go into our terminal, if I can get my terminal back. Okay. This is the interactive Python. So you can start creating objects in here. So if I do import psycopg2, right, I can do help on that. And that tells me what that is. It's a Python driver for PostgreSQL. And then again, it shows you the package contents, what we've got in this. We've got error codes, errors, extras, and so on and so forth. So you could be doing these kind of things interactively. So I could go on and just start throwing in these commands that I'm using in the main function, like this one. If I just copy and paste it. and then I provide the database name, username, and all the parameters individually. I could do that. So database is NCM. User is equal to Postgres, the default
So right now
user.
he's hard coding those values. So in the code, it says database DB name, right? That's a variable that holds the name that can change. It's dynamic.
Password.
But there he's just putting strings.
And port equals, I think it's the default 5432. I think that's everything that you need. Oh, you need a host. Yeah, you need host. Host equals localhost. And hopefully if I did it correctly. No, I didn't. So localhost.
I think it's Mr. Comma. I think the rest of it.
Oh yeah, it's a comma. You're right. I missed the comma. There you go. So now I've got, if I do db_connection, that should just tell me that it's a class, a connection object. So it's a object of connection, db connection class. Right, this is it. So this is the way you can do it interactively, and then you can create a cursor object. So cursor equal db connection cursor, and these empty parentheses at the end, they signify that you're actually calling a function. Okay, and here we created another object. So if I do cursor, it shows me we've got a cursor object, and this is how you discover this nesting structure and the functionality that you need one by one. And this is how I pretty much wrote my every script. Before I ended up with this nicely structured and fully complete, product that works. It was, few hours, sometimes few days on the more, more difficult ones. It was few days, maybe a few weeks of that experimentation and diving into different, subparts of bigger objects and bigger modules.
And I can see the appeal of using the interactive shell, right? You've talked about some of the pros. What are the cons to you in using the interactive shell?
I don't think there are any. I mean, for learning and for quick results, if you are just doing something on a whim, interactive way is the best way. But if you're trying to do something that you obviously handing over to some other people, like I did with our NOC guys who weren't proficient with Python at all. So this is something, obviously, you need to package it to be, easily usable by just running the script and providing it some arguments. This is how we do it.
Completely agree with you. What advice would you give to people who are just starting out, right? They are literally learning variables, functions, how to troubleshoot, like we're on the foundational level. What would you recommend to them to get over the hump of actually writing a script? Because that's what I'm trying to do with this video series with you and others is, okay, you've learned all this little tiny stuff and let's start making baby scripts. Let's get over that hump of making yourself think programmatically.
Yes. Well, my personal hack with it was I found a few websites that publish mathematical and programming puzzles and challenges.
Wow, yeah.
And worked on them, because you really, to master this, you need a task, and it's sometimes hard. It's hard coming up with your own task, especially if you're trying to find a real implementation at work, as like I did. It's not always available, unfortunately. So you need something created artificially, but still challenging. So I'm using sites like Code Wars. There's another one called Coding Game. There's a great one called Project Euler. And they all publish really good programming challenges, which you can solve in many languages, including Python. So this is
I'll link to all those challenges or all those websites in the description too. I like that. So it's a way to actually hone your skills, right? To challenge yourself and practice them before you even know what real world problem you're going to solve. Because that is a question I get asked all the time is like, okay, but what am I actually going to use this for? And,
exactly.
I think the standard thing we kind of tell people is, well, go through your day to day. What do you typically do on a typical day, and find aspects of that to automate.
Yep.
And I think that that's still a difficult bridge the gap mentally at times when people are just starting out. So I like this recommendation.
And the other side of it is, automation is a really powerful tool, but every powerful tool comes with a warning. You multiply your force both for good and for bad. So the cost of mistake in automating something in production is greater than a cost of mistake done manually. So that's why these kind of sites, they provide you with an ability to practice your skills and to improve your skills in programming in general, with data structures, with algorithms and the way you implement the programming, but without the risk of breaking anything in production.
Tell us about that too, because that's another common concern is breaking production. What ways can people test or practice their scripts? Like, what are some of the options here?
I would definitely recommend to start with, try not to do anything, no write operations, no delete operations. Do read only, like I did here. So I'm not writing anything into database. I'm just reading stuff, right? This is the best way to start. This is the best way to acquaint yourself with the likes of, if you're looking at REST API of a certain system, start with GET requests, start with, head requests, and explore it till you are confident that you know what you're doing before doing anything with, destructive operations.
Yeah, there's also sometimes sandboxes. Some people I've heard of set up staging or test environments. I don't know if you have opinions on any of that.
Labs. Well, in my previous job, we had a huge lab server where we used to run crazy GNS3 topologies with lots of networking gear of different vendors, and dotted around Docker containers with Ansible and Python scripts and traffic generators and you name it, everything. So yeah, it's really good when you have something like that and you can utilize it. But if not, then these websites and playgrounds that you can get online for free, these are a great alternative.
And now you mentioned that if you were to go back or improve this script, one thing you would do is improve the security of like not hard coding the sensitive information, right?
Yes.
Is there anything else that you would do to improve this script or that you would do to enhance the script if you had the time and whatever?
No, I think with this one, it's so simple that it's really hard to do something more because it does so little. There isn't much room for improvement, but security is one thing. And another thing, as I already mentioned, I moved some of the, I probably increased the complexity of my SQL request, but at the same time, I fetch less data from the database. And if your retention period is quite large and you've got a lot of backups done, then you're unnecessarily fetching a lot of data in your SQL request, and then you're sifting through that data within your script. It's a bit more intensive on the network. I mean, still for something like this, which you run over a LAN network with plenty of bandwidth, probably wouldn't be a problem. Well, if we scale it up many times, it probably might start to become an issue. So as the more efficient you make it on the networking side, the less data you fetch in the first place, and filter on the server side rather than on the client side, the better, of course.
And I know that a lot of people too, when they go back and improve upon their code or refactor it, which we have not talked about much yet, they'll do things like make the code more readable and maintainable, right? And I think looking at your code too, it's very I don't want to say intuitive because everyone watching this is just starting out, right? But you have written it intuitively, as in, you didn't name the IP address like X. Like you didn't make the variable name something crazy, right? I know exactly what each piece of information is. And that's what we talk about when we talk about readable code and not needing like comments to explain literally every line.
Yeah, that is a bit of an improvement as well. When I started, I wrote terrible code in that respect. I also didn't think much about the variable names, but as time goes by, I start to do it more. And I've also kept the original comments out of it as well, because I'm actually quite not bad on the commenting my code. I usually have quite a bit of comments, but just for cleanliness, I left them out.
I also like comments. It's I like being perfectionist like that. And where can people follow your work, Sergey? People who are interested in what you're doing or you.
Well, I'm not doing much on social media, but I've been for a while. I've been developing my own training course on network automation fundamentals, and soon I am going to be recording it and looking for the ways to market it. So it probably will be through one of the video training hostings, like maybe Udemy or something similar. Undecided yet. So I'm looking to probably start recording in the next week and hope to finish by beginning of summer. And hopefully within, around the summertime, we'll see where it's gonna emerge available for the market.
Well, there you go, folks. There's another network automation resource. I know that I'm doing my own course here, but when you're learning, you're typically going to aggregate multiple resources. I mean, I don't know about you, Sergey, but I definitely didn't learn from one resource. There's not one single website, book, teacher, nothing that I learned everything from.
Yes.
So use the resources at your disposal. And I guess they can follow you on LinkedIn maybe for that announcement, like to see you when it comes out.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, and yeah, everybody's welcome to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for being with us, Sergey. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. I will answer them, or maybe ping one to Sergey if needed, maybe if he's willing to volunteer his time. And I will catch you guys in the next video.
Thank you very much, Erika, for having me.